With the data, obviously we're starting to see security being more and more of an issue. And we're seeing states like New York passing laws for privacy. What can we expect here locally, or have you or any of you, and by locally, Arnold, also in the Bay Area, what have you seen? Please give us some insight. But do you think we'll begin to see the federal government taking action and passing privacy laws? I'll kick this to Karina to start.
Lord, that's a good question.
Karina, I know Karina has some good stuff on this
Right.
one.
Yep.
Can you see my head just bubbling right now?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So where to start? So CCPA becomes enforceable July 1 of this year. Became law 1/1, right? Not as close to GDPR, which launched May 18th, 2019, 18. A lot of fines are coming out about that, of course, and this is a very heavy strain for the government entities who are doing the investigations. So what we have to keep in mind is, do we want more accountability with how data is handled from a consumer perspective, that we gift to these companies that they do a myriad of things with, as far as they sell your information? You've got data brokers. CCPA originally started as the anti-data broker law, and then it grew from there. CPRA, which is going to be on the November ballot for California, is a CCPA on steroids. It has a lot more restrictions, a lot more accountability for these companies. Unfortunately, the tough thing is, if you read any SOC 2, it opens with saying there are subservice organizations, which means that the company being audited uses off-prem services and a vendor who may also use off-prem services downstream. And they say, based on AICPA trust principles, we're trusting that our vendor that we give this data to is doing the right thing. How closely are they audited? We hope always, and we hope that it's stringent accountability, but we don't know that that's necessarily true with vendor management. Risk management seems to be on the low totem pole for a lot of people, unfortunately. So for now, we have Maine, we have Nevada, we have the state of California that have very state-specific privacy laws in place. CPRA may notch it up a little bit more in California. So here's the problem. It's kind of like what we saw with COVID, right? We have a head, good, bad, or indifferent, at a federal level that says, all yous open your own states. Good luck with that. So the risk of having a federal-wide privacy position for all companies to abide by, I don't know that the government is able to pony up the resources needed, skilled in cybersecurity, with all of the right investigative principles in place to even know what the hell to look for sloppy data handling, which really most of this comes from just sheer negligence. I don't think anyone ever walks in and says, oh, well, I mean, some people do, granted, and some of my best friends are ethical hackers. Some people do walk in and say, I'm going to go steal a ton of information. So my ethical hacker friends, they're the ones that are like, oh, let me counter you. However, a lot of data loss and leakage is genuinely accidental. And so it's putting those same controls in place, the right controls in place, which goes back up to how strong is your policy? What is it based on? Which regulation? What framework did you use? How did you make it applicable to your industry and your company? That's kind of the trick. Okay, go.
I was gonna say, I have some thoughts on that too. Is like, so when you buy a car in the United States, sometimes you'll see, is this car emissioned for California or all of the other states? And that's because California has the strongest emission regulations when it comes to automobiles. So the idea is, it's like, I would be shocked. My guess is, from a federal level, they'll do whatever the most stringent state that's out there. They might treat it a lot like car emissions, to say like, okay, I'm going to acquiesce to, New York or Illinois or Washington or California, because they're the ones that they're the most stringent of states. From a company perspective, this is where I don't necessarily know if it even matters if the federal government makes one, unless it supersedes in terms of strength all of the states. And the reason is because there's a really good chance, and everybody can see it, especially in the world that we live in right now, you're doing business in multiple countries. So you might already be stationed in the United States, headquartered here, but doing business that could be affected by GDPR. So you have to be in line with that regulation if you're selling or doing business in that particular region. I don't necessarily think it matters, again, unless they make it more stringent than the states. And to be fair, I just don't see it happening. I don't think they'll do that, which is fine, because we'll just do what other states say. Also, data privacy is a fundamental basic human right. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Or it gets disclosed, right? I mean, or I go in as a consumer and someone says to me, hey, Karina, I know you're signing up for this rewards or points or 20% discount. And somebody says to me, sign here, but warning, I'm going to sell your information for a dime once a day. At least I would have the right to say, okay, give me like 3 cents of that, just like share, right? Because if you're going to be profiting off of my information, and I'm so undermining, completely unintentionally, I'm undermining marketing efforts, shared distribution lists, marketing campaigns you can buy, and I have no intent to do that. Sales, I mean, all of the advertising we have, and I'm not saying that that's a bad business practice. I'm saying that as a consumer, I would just like to know. That's all.
That makes sense. So I guess in terms of a company, and on a little bit more positive, obviously security is important, but if you're trying to take your company to that next level in terms of data, and let's assume that the security they have somewhat on lockdown, how would you get your company to the next level of speaking? So you got your data, the security somewhat understood. What brings that company from here and takes it literally up to here? I'll pass that one off to Scott right now.
Oh, hey, you get that one first, huh? Okay. So it's really going to be dependent upon the company or whatever the thing that you're trying to sell or be the productize or whatever that is. For me, it's about, you need to create that unique experience. Let's say I am in the business, I'm selling some type of product. Maybe I'm selling insurance. So let's just go to there. I need to everybody has data. Data is table stakes. What you do with the data and to make it information and then draw intelligence, that's the most important thing. It's very easy in today's landscape. From a click of a button online, you can get basically just about anything that you want. So you have to create a unique experience in order for that consumer to want to stay into business with you. You need to be like 2 or 3 steps ahead of me to tell me what I think I want. It's the Amazon effect, right? I'm on Amazon and I buy this thing and it's like, oh, you people who buy this also buy this other thing. And you're like, I don't need that thing. And then 3 days later you go, I need the thing. Like Amazon predicted that I needed the thing before I thought it was dumb. And then I knew that I needed it. It's that experience. You need to be ahead of the consumer. So if you are starting a company and you have all of this information, maybe I'm an ice cream shop and every single Thursday I have a loyalty card and I have data that says Scott comes in every single Thursday. You know what I'm going to do? Wednesday night, I'm going to give him like a $5 coupon off every 3rd week because he's going to continue to come in. That's based on the predictability of my data and the loyalty information they got from my card. Like that's a unique experience for me because they know I come in on Thursdays and they got that information because they synthesized it out of just the data that came through on a loyalty card. You got to make it a personalized experience.
And I think now we're going to see that more so than ever, that we have to make the consumer have a very, very personalized journey and roadmap to the end product and whatever that looks like. And that's where data really needs to be utilized and leveraged. So kind of going up, and Karina, did you want to jump on that? What do you think takes a company from level 1 to level 2?
Good policies.
Okay.
I'm gonna harp again.
Go back to policies.
Right? Policies define your controls, your operational controls, then you can measure them. And once you've measured them, then you can do gap analysis. You can do target roadmap items because you went through your framework, right, before as you were establishing your policies and your controls. It's automation opportunities, it's role definition, it's really solidly focusing on policies, and then sitting down once a year and actually walking through them and saying, hey, you know, this paragraph over here, nothing to do with us anymore. We thought we wanted it when we wrote this out, but we really don't. So let's get rid of it. Let's change it. Or here's a compensating control.
And by the way, both of the experiences that we just described happen foundationally with data governance. Like you do both of the things.
Yeah, I was going to say it lends itself to all of that, right? I mean, what Karina just described lends itself to having good data, right? Good data is defined by that organization, what it means to them, right? It's good because, you know, this is what I need to make good business decisions, and it was available to me because of all the policies and everything, that all the governance that's in place today, right? And how am I going to give that user experience, excellent user experience to my end customers? Well, I have good data to make good decisions. I can put some AI against it and start really mining that data correctly. And I can predict things, just like Scott mentioned, right? You can't predict anything if you don't have good data. And if you don't have good data, typically it's because you don't have good control. So it's a big full circle, right? And how you do it.
Great. So obviously I keep hearing that you need to strengthen alignment, it sounds like, and especially the policies. So if a company is struggling with this and struggling aligning their policies and strengthening alignment, what are some maybe advice that you would give them right now? Maybe like 1 or 2 sound bites that they could take and actually implement within their company. Arnold, I see you smiling. Do you have something?
It's a big animal. It's just huge, right? It's like, where do you start? That's the thing, right? It really depends on the goal, the industry, what they're doing, and where they're at in their journey, right? If they're foundationally not sound with governance and policies and all that, then that's where they need to start. But again, they need a roadmap. They need to understand where they want to end up, and then the policies, all the governance, it has to be solid. But then what, you know, from a data perspective is, what kind of data do I need after that? What kind of noise do I get rid of? How do I mine that correctly so I can get some good, meaningful results so I can go make some money, right? Bottom line. That's the way I see it. I know it's a very tactical, high-level way of looking at it, but that's the way I see it.
For me, it's get back to simple, right? So if you think about it, Google was a search company. That's what they first started. They wanted to aggregate all the world's information. Right? That's what they wanted to do that first. Facebook, when they first started, they were a social company. They were a social network. They didn't do all this other stuff. Get back to something simple, really streamline processes, get back to where the thing, get back to the basics. You know, I'm thinking around, like, in your organization, there's probably a lot of partnerships that you can utilize, things like your information risk management, your audit groups, those different types of things. Really establish those partnerships that you have with those groups, and get back to keeping it simple.
Yes.
Great. So when companies are keeping it simple, what would be some of their challenges as they're starting to go back to the basics and realign themselves as a company? What would be a challenge that they're going to experience in this journey? And how can they start to really navigate that world?
It could be anything. I mean, it genuinely could be. It could be unexpected market behavior, customer behavior. It could be an internal failure point. It could be a single point of failure. You know, you could have Bob has the golden kingdoms to all of the files, and Bob wins the lottery. I never say Bob gets hit by a truck. Bob wins the lottery, and Bob calls you and says, hey, I'm on an airplane. I'm never coming back. Well, all of a sudden, everything's locked under Bob's password, and he's on vacation. He got really drunk, and he doesn't even remember what it is anymore because he won the lottery. He's thinking about
Bob is so lucky.
Right?
I like Bob. I like Bob already.
So, but I mean, it happens all the time. It happens all the time where you have operational single points of failure. You have external influences, ups and downs from projections, from customers, from market volatility. You have snafus. One of your vendors goes down. One of your vendors goes down, takes all your data with you. Where's your backup? And it's about knowing where your golden eggs, and that kind of loops back us to that data conversation we started with about how important it is to really know, including all of your vendors. And I can't stress this one enough, because I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with who oh, well, this guy over here operationally, here's the 10 things that he does for me with everything I pass him. The end. And here's a check I write him. Da, da, da. I don't have to think about it. And that's the scariest part, is because if you're handing that vendor any data, what are they doing with it? Where is it stored? Who are they passing it on to? What's the multiplication factor? If someone leaks at a data center for removed, how would you ever know about it and notify your customers? You would never know unless they have the decency and the ethical professionalism to stand up and say, I think I reconnected back to you all this data that I lost. You should go notify your customers now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's really the likelihood of that happening?
I think it probably up there with Bob winning the lotto.
I like that one. That's my favorite.
I like Bob.
Bob's a good guy. Well, I think we're about at the time where we can start opening it up to questions. So I'll start, before I ask another question, just open it up to everyone on the call right now. Should you have any questions, you want to direct those to Arnold, Scott, or Karina, please go ahead and type those in the chat, and we'll make sure we get those over. Before we get to the questions, I did have one final question. So it was actually a report, it was an AI report study through PwC, and apparently in February 2020, they discussed a lot of different executives, and apparently a lot were keen to operationalize AI, or artificial intelligence. However, but few were ensuring that their data and the data models were progressive. Now, this is obviously prior to COVID-19. Now that we see COVID-19, how do you think this is going to change on more of that enterprise level, at the executive level? Are they going to start taking more time to invest in their data models, and ensuring that they're progressive, so they can start looking at AI in a more, I guess, traditional sense, insofar as that their data is clean? Or what do you think about this? I mean, this was just one study, but this is previous to COVID-19.
AI is it's a slippery slope, right? So AI, in machine learning, so AI and ML, everybody on this call knows if you put bad data into an AI or an ML model, you're going to have a bad model. So let's just get that out of the way. But the idea is, like, you have to have, I think what you're going to see is it's going to spin up okay, now we have this huge push to make sure that our data quality is right. So we can, next time it comes around, we're ready to go and unleash the robots to make these decisions for us. So they're going to spend this, a huge amount of bandwidth to make sure that their data is clean, which, by the way, they should have been doing for a long time. And that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. But what some of the businesses are being short-sighted on is, now you're getting into an ethical question. So you automate everything. You have AI pushing all the buttons for you, all this machine learning pushing all the buttons for you, and the next pandemic happens. So are you now not going to have any human interaction at all to make sure that the decisions that your robots are making are actually in line with the ethics of your company or the ethics of yourself? And see, that's a different conversation. So it's great that they take
in a sense, right?
Right. So it's the trolley effect. Folks that may not may know the AI trolley effect. You think about a Tesla driving down the road. Tesla's job is to make sure to keep the driver safe. So you come up to a situation, you veer off on one side of the road, you hit 5 people, you veer off on the right side of the road, you hit a woman in a baby basket. If you don't do anything, you hit the truck in front of you and you die. The AI is picking. Do you trust the AI to do that? But you can't just unleash the machines to do the thing. There has to be a quote unquote governance of the machine, and really understand exactly what that AI and ML is going to be doing for you.
So Scott, can we ask personally, how far do you trust the AI right now?
I have a smart home.
Okay, fair enough. Good to know, just curious.
AI has gone a long way, but again, the ethical piece, I think, is what's really, there's disciplines just focused on the ethical piece of AI, right? And making those decisions, how are they made? But even as far as you know, those data scientists, right? They range, right, from someone actually just looking at a response and changing the verbiage, all the way to somebody actually putting algorithms together, right? But you know, as you're putting these models in play, there's a lot to think through, right? Who is my audience? For example, if it's an Asian market, how are those responses going to be executed, right? What do you say? How does it react? Those kind of things. So you need to understand those dynamics, and you know, put those algorithms in play correctly, and then have the data in place that's going to support that. And then again, you go back to governance, because it's all data, making sure you have policies in place and the right mechanics in place to make sure that it continually gets updated and it's correct. And then you put the ethical issue on top of that, then yeah, then you have a very interesting dynamic that you have to kind of deal with.
Absolutely.
It's fun stuff though.
Oh yeah, I love that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you see a lot of, I know a couple here in the Bay Area that I've been talking to, and they have their own platforms that are focused on AI, the chatbots, all that good stuff, and you know, they have their strengths. Each one of them have their strength, but again, it all boils down to the same thing. It's the data that's there, and how do you keep it clean, accurate. What is your company's focus? What you are trying to extend out to the folks, and that data has to reflect that, right? And then mined correctly. So there's a lot to it, right?
Yep.
Well, here we have a question from Edward. And he asked, how difficult is it, or has it been, to get the appropriate business owners to actually take ownership?
It's really tough.
Yep.
It's really tough, and here's why. People don't want to make decisions on behalf of someone else. They're just gun shy. So when you get a group of executives in a room, that's the only time they will make a decision, when they can look at each other in the eye and say, oh, okay, you're going to do that, I'm going to do this other thing. Okay, we'll come together in the middle. It's going to all be good. The toughest part, without an actual kind of come to the table scenario, is that you won't have, the guy in HR won't make a decision for IT. The guy in IT will make a decision for everyone, but they shouldn't, because they're waiting for everybody else to make a decision, because no one else wants to make a decision. So there's a lot of, so I leverage a lot of mock-ups, as in, okay, let's run this one through. Here's a really bad situation. Let's take it forward. These 4 bad things happen. Did it really matter that so-and-so couldn't, make some mind up? So let's all come to the table. I mean, it's such a loaded question, because there's so many scenarios to how to answer that, but it's really, really tough to have everyone decide, because they won't. And so a lot of it is a matter of just negotiating a common interest and common targets, and sometimes everyone compromises. But if there's an agreed upon decision that can be a solid policy statement, then operations can continue, and everyone knows who owns which piece of it.
Yeah, actually, within our policy, we lay out roles and responsibilities, and we've identified 2 roles. We call them business process owners and data stewards, specifically named in the policy for us, that come out and say that. Now, there's expectations with those 2 roles. So this is just one of the methods that you can use.
Yeah.
One of the methods, so with those people, is they're picked, they're from down on high. They're saying, you are this person, you are accountable for data governance in your business unit. Therefore, the buck stops with you. And so ultimately, if they can't make the call, it goes to one of our operating committees, where the call will be made, but it's ultimately, we want you to figure that out first. But if you truly can't make that decision, we will make it for you. But there is an accountable party for each business unit to make that call. And we give them the power to do that.
Yeah, that's good. From my perspective and what I've seen out there, we come in pre-sales discussions, we talk about scope and what the end objective and the goal is going to be. And then we slowly execute that moving forward. Once everything is signed and ready to go, the hope and what we're always focused on is to make sure that not only we understand the scope of that implementation, but we also try to prod to make sure that they know the full scope of what they're asking us to do as well, right? Because a lot of times there's a directive, whether it's reactive, meaning something happened, so we need to get this done, right? We got audited, so we need to fix it now, fix it fast. Without truly understanding the full breadth of why that's broken. When it comes to data, obviously there's, we can keep going on and on. We just talked about the governance around it. If that's not there and they're trying to fix something over here with data, again, if they didn't understand this piece on this side, their scope is too narrow. So when you get in and start having these conversations, you start finding out that folks aren't buying in because they don't know enough. And the person that has to make the ultimate decision just kind of executes and says, let's go, right? And the expectation is, this is the scope, this is the budget, this is the timeline. But the true scope is a lot bigger than that. So we need to try to, our best, there's kind of an art to it, but our best to understand and make sure that they understand what they're looking for as well. So in regards to buy-in, how do you get them to buy in? It's helping them, peel the onion from a execution technology perspective and what's going to be needed, so they can understand exactly what needs to be done, and hopefully we can convince them to all come to the table and make an agreement.
Great insight. I have another question from someone in the audience, Miguel. The question is where do you see the future of data governance? Do you think the data community of the world will have a written code of ethics like the other fields that we see? So like the oath for doctors. What do you think?
So I was actually just going to reply to Miguel a second ago. There's something called the AICPA trust principles, which exists on top of every SIG, SSAE 18, SOC 2, SOC 1. AICPA trust principles were established so long ago, saying that the assumption is kind of like the same Hippocratic oath that doctors take. The assumption is that when you're trusting your partners and your vendors, that they are doing the right thing in using subservice organizations for the receiving end, right? Just like you're storing your data in a trustworthy space, they must be too. So right now, all your SOC 2s and SOC 1s open with, based on AICPA trust principles, we're assuming that subservice organizations and the subservice organizations of your subservice organizations are all doing the right thing. So this is where I'm saying, so there kind of is that oath already, and I wish it were more stressed on, but it really is the accountability of those executives negotiating that contract and really understanding the contents of what their vendor is offering them to audit their vendors. Your vendor risk management program is so critical right now, whatever it is, even if it's on a Post-it note, even if it's a phone call, even if it's you have a data center in Oklahoma and you're at a client site, go swing in. Hey, I want to see your physical controls, your logical access controls. How do you have a guard? Do you have a visitor's log? I mean, there's just so much, it's kind of, we use the data and we lose it, and we don't do that careful shepherding and massaging of how significant it is and how well it's protected when we get after the point that we've used it.
Yeah, I think you're going to see, I'm going to take a different side, is like, I think you're going to see an evolution that includes data governance, that's going to include things around data ethics. What's the proper usage? I know, fingers crossed, right? Proper usage of the data. How are you using it for your machine learning and AI? I think that's just a natural evolution. Mm-hmm. It's also going to protect you from the companies, like I mentioned earlier, the Facebook Cambridge Analytica thing. Like, most people think it was a breach for Facebook. Not actually. Like, Cambridge Analytica was allowed to have access to that data. They just did stuff that Facebook didn't know they were actually doing with it. So I do believe there will be some type of more data ethics related oath that will be a part of governance. It won't just be a governance thing, though. It's like a data management, data architecture, data governance, a whole lot of pieces and parts. But I do believe there's going to be some type of oath that might come out. I don't want to say soon, but I could see that changing.
Interesting. Well, hopefully we start to see the ethics more and more involved. I think with the data, AI, and ML, I think that's definitely one that they have to have some type of.
You got to put guardrails.
Exactly.
Yeah. You need some guardrails.
Yeah. Now that's the thing is like, we don't want to say stop all innovation. No, actually, we just want to say stay in here. And if you want to go outside of the here, tell me what the business benefit of going outside that is, and then we'll just move the guardrail. Like there has to be some type of give and take. Just play in the sandbox.
And that's how CCPA is written. You basically have to opt into marketing. So the V2 section AB 1121 that's coming into effect come January 1 of 2021 says, if you take my picture as an employee for my badge, you have to disclose to me that you're using it for a badge. You can't always also go use it for some other thing, right? So that data disclosure principle is going to become more and more key. I think it's great.
Ooh, I need to read up on that.
Call me.
I get my picture taken all day long every time I go somewhere.
I'll tell you.
Excuse me, what are you doing with that picture? So on the way out, can I have my picture back?
All right, I think we have time for one more question. And this question comes in from Justin, and it says to the panel, assuming the perspective where you're a senior associate or in a smaller organization that has no policies or dedicated resources to data or its governance, how would you go about influencing your C-suite that governance matters? What should that conversation look like? Good question.
That's a great question. This is probably going to be very blunt and to the point. I think you go in and you say, look, you're here right now. You make, I'm going to make this number up. In your organization, you have a revenue of $1.5 million. If you allow me to do X, Y, and Z, and then literally lay out what the X, Y, and Z is, I can get your revenue from 1.5 to $2.5 million. And they're going to go immediately, how in the world do you do that? And then you tell them what it is. Or you can take the opposite approach. You go, your revenue currently is $1.5 million. By the way, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, your revenue will actually just be $300,000 because you're going to be paying fines on all of the other things that you're doing. So it's either I'm going to get you greenback dollars, or I'm going to give you, $500,000 or $500,000 in risk or cost avoidance by the principles. It's effectively, what is in it for them? If you just lay out flat out, this is what's in it for you. You either are going to assume the risk that you're not going to do a thing, and then you're going to get mad when you have to pay a fine, or I can increase your revenue by 20 to 50%.
Yep. And if you're working for a good company, they will love you for that, right? Putting that together for them, because it does matter. And Scott, I like the way you put both sides of it, because, for me, I always look at it the other way. It's like, if you get hit with a breach, or if there's bad publicity on your organization, and that's really important to you, you're gone, right? What does that cost, right? Sometimes you can't even put a monetary value to it, right? The bad publicity could crush you, could just, make you go away. So it's very important.
Reputational risk is a very real thing. You see whole companies close down because of hits that they've taken in their reputation. And the world is super harsh to that type of stuff. It's hard to overcome really bad negative publicity. I mean, Cambridge Analytica closed. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg had to go in front of Congress multiple times. I mean, Facebook's a huge moving machine, but they've paid record amounts of fines in some cases.
Yeah.
And again, Marriott breach, their first big one of 50 million passports lost. Like, I mean, when I think about that, it's just mind boggling, but they admitted that it was repository of a repository of a repository scenario. They didn't even know that they were leaking, right? But they're the ones that are collecting the data, and they're the ones that have to own up to fessing and holding on to that data. I mean, they have to fess up to it publicly, regardless of what subcontractors they used. all you can hope for is those subcontracting companies, subservice companies have really great cyber insurance amounts.
Mm-hmm.
All you can hope for, right? And you can hope to make that solid connection between their loss and your impact to your data and your customer impact, which now needs to be monetized, right? So, so very important to stress the need of governance. But again, everybody at the table and making decisions collectively with kind of a charter walking into the room saying, we're here to do this. We will make a decision. We will define ownership like Scott was talking about. And you start writing, you start looking at those great frameworks. There's so many awesome frameworks of people who sat at tables, and they're super crazy smart humans who all collaborated and wrote this stuff out for us to use. Holy cow. You know, if I used COBIT 2019 already twice, just got published last February, used it twice, great framework, scales again, different maturity levels, different organizational industries. But if you can narrow in on what's important to you, I mean, NIST, NICE, there's so many great resources out there that it's just, it's a playground.
Yep.
I like how you said that, Karina. It is a playground right now. So I said that was the last question. We just have one last question, I promise, that came in. And this is coming from a student. They're a full stack developer, and they are wondering how you would suggest that they could utilize data governance as a full stack developer.
Good question.
Sorry, I always keep going first, so I don't want to jump in first.
No, go ahead. I'm thinking.
I would say my only recommendation in that one is making sure that your data is properly classified, right? Because if you know your bucket of data goes and is general ledger and supports your Sarbanes-Oxley initiatives, or your data is, you're doing IQ, OQ, PQ for validation. If you're a pharma, you need to know where your clinical trials data is, that's properly classified so that you can then categorize that data and classify it in a way that, if something fails, what do you recover first, right? What thing would need stronger controls than the next thing? One great example, I worked with a biotech who their change management process had data classified along the way. And so the changes that had data that was golden egg data required 3 approvals versus changes that were not golden egg data impacting required 2 approvals. And it went down a faster path. So when you're structuring your data, you can definitely classify it in a way that can support your operations.
For me, I would say get really familiar with data architecture, and the classification is a much bigger deal because it gives you a real big opportunity to do a lot of things, not only from a recovery perspective, but when you start to get into automation. So now you're getting into data automation from an architecture perspective. If your data is classified the right way, you can write security automation controls and just literally within the code and just boom, fire it off. So you have the security as code, and that's a way that you should be looking at it. So it's really become familiar with the data architecture, because if you do it right, there's a lot of things that you can do from an automation perspective. There's a lot of things you can do, which again, all leads to the cleanliness of the data. So I would say definitely lean into data architecture.
Yeah, and I'll go a little bit more simpler. I mean, full stack developer, I'm not sure what, industry or silo you're in, but regardless, where you're at, just, stay curious around the governance that's around each one of those, and really just start exploring that, right? And being very mindful of the data and respecting it, the fact that it has to be governed, it has to be, I don't want to use clean, but it has to be clean, right? Updated, all that good stuff. And if you continue down that path, I mean, you can just continue to be curious and you'll be fine. But understanding the silos you're in, the industry you're in is key as well, because there's different frameworks for each one of those.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to cut us off at a true hour to make sure that we're true to everyone's schedule. So again, I appreciate, of course, our three panelists. You three were amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today and really giving us those insights to data governance. You truly all are three experts in the industry. And also thank you for everyone that joined. I hope you take away some great takeaways. There was definitely a lot of good sound bits here. And again, thanks so much. And we'll be sure to let you guys know next events coming up, and we look forward to seeing everyone soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, great work. Everyone did fantastic. Karina was
Nice job. Nice job, Catherine.
No, you guys did great.
You did great. Good job. Love it.
Good.
Really, it was great working with you guys. I got to tell you guys all, I was getting feedback from, I'm sure you got individual message as well. I got a lot of great feedback from the speakers, so great work.
Good. Awesome.
Great job answering all the questions.
You did great.
It's great. Karina jumped off, huh?
I know, I'll have to send her a message on email because I got one specifically for her, so I'll have to send it over.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I'm gonna have a drink and celebration to our first one here.
There you go.
Or my first one. I know this is your second one.
So he can have one with us. Here, I'm gonna see if I can, Oh well. Cheers, John.
Good
Cheers.
deal.
Nice job. Really nice job. Seriously, this is good stuff.
It was a great content. I mean, it was really great content. The security piece is so relevant right now with everything going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a crazy world we live in.
So huge. Yeah, it is. It's a huge topic. We can go down each one of those in greater detail, right? So, I mean, those are good ideas for future conversations, right? If you have an audience that's asking about something specifically, let's go down that route, right? If it's AI, let's do AI. And we can bring in, I mean, I know folks that are specific in that industry, running companies that are founded, they'll come in and have conversations with us, right? I think it'll be awesome.
I can get you a ton of people from Nationwide on all that. Seriously.
Yeah.
Just let me know what you need and I'll get somebody.
You have a new hire at Nationwide. Were you part of that?
Wait, which what?
Dr. Coverdale?
Yes, she came to Nationwide.
Yeah, like when did that, how did that happen?
I don't know. I don't know when she came, and because I saw her, I was like, wait a minute, she looks really familiar. And I was like, what? And so I messaged her the other day. I was like, hey, stranger, how's it going?
Yeah.
And she's super excited to be there. Obviously, I haven't had a chance to actually go over to her office to say hi because of COVID, but she's yep, I know right where she's at. I'm going to be working with her a lot, actually.
Oh, I'm so excited for you.
Yeah,
guys.
it's
So,
awesome.
real quick backstory to that, Arnold. So Scott and Dr. Coverdale, they were on the same panel for 2020 Tech Trends. So the similar back in January. So I think that's the first time you met her, right, Scott?
That was the very first time. Yep.
So, and then she pinged me like 2 or 3 days ago and I was like, I'm working at Nationwide. And I wanted to be like, did Scott get you the job? Like, did you?
No, but literally, she reports to Melanie Culp and I love Melanie. She's amazing. As soon as I found out, I pinged, and Melanie's an SVP, so she's way above me. And I was like, I was like, you have no idea how amazing of a person that you have brought in. I am so excited for you. And I copied Dr. Coverdale on it, and she was like, oh my God, you're so sweet. So it was a funny situation.
That's great. I'm so excited that you two are working together. That makes me really, really happy.
It's awesome.
Nationwide keeps stealing the best people, but anyways,
I'm not even sad about it.
No, I wouldn't be. You guys are like all the good ones. But
we're monopolizing all the talent in Columbus.
Just like suck
there
it up.
You go.
Yeah.
Get it all.
Really
There's a lot of talent there, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot, man. There is a lot of talent in Columbus. And with Nationwide now doing the, working from home thing, it's super interesting. So like a lot of Nationwide's working from home, but yeah, it's fun. It's fun stuff.
It is. And I also, on the side note, love the ethical conversation as well.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask, but I didn't ask. So do you guys think there's going to be like entire ethic departments, sort of how we have HR, but it'll be strictly like ethics? Like with the company?
Nationwide has a chief ethics officer. Yeah, and data ethics is a part of it. Yeah.
Okay, and you said analytics is a part of that, or what did you say?
Well, like data ethics. So data ethics is a part of it. His name's Parag. He's a great guy, Parag Shah.
Okay.
And he's the chief ethics officer. So when it comes to data ethics, he is a part of the conversations. Yeah.
What's his background?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I've only met him like a handful of times.
Chief ethics officer.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not that many of those. I'm going to assume because of it's in the insurance business, right? That's pretty important, right? To make sure that you have all that ethically right.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that is something like an ethics type officer, because 15 years ago there was really no chief data officer either. So you have things like chief information officer, which was about 20 years ago, chief data officer like 15 years ago. We could go down the path of a chief data ethics officer sometime soon. You never know.
I would hope so.
Oh yeah,
maybe I'll do that one day.
I mean, there's all kinds of programs out, master's programs. It's like Harvard and Stanford. They have full disciplines just on that stuff, on ethical data, AI, all that.
I love all that stuff. I'm a huge nerd though.
You here?
Yeah, I can go down that rabbit hole pretty quick too, and it keeps going. I mean, not just ethics, but the psyche of people and having to deal with the technology and the way it's going to be in the very near future. I mean, it's happening already, right? But to really put a discipline around the psyche of it, it's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah.
It's cool stuff. It's exciting. Well, guys, I really appreciate your time today. You guys did fantastic. Yeah. So I did record it. I will say I forgot to hit record. So like the intro of me saying like who you are and welcome was not in part of the recording. But as soon as the questions started, I was like, oh, we're recording. So I have that. So I figured Danny's Arnold's daughter, who's fantastic in marketing. She can like edit it and make it look really great. So
fantastic.
All right.
All right.
We'll make it happen.
So it'll still recorded. All right. Well, thanks everyone again.
Thanks, y'all.
Scott, good seeing you again, man.
Thanks, Arnold.
Danny. So you guys can have a copy of what it looks like.
Awesome.
All right. Bye, all. Have a great day.
Bye, y'all. Bye.